This is 2013's Unseen Verse passage from Ovid's Metamorphoses. So Pentheus goes up a mountain to spy on women worshipping the god Bacchus. They include Pentheus's mother Agave and her sisters Ino and Eutono. Driven wild by Bacchus and thinking that Pentheus is an animal, they launch a frenzied attack on him. Pentheus himself went to Mount Kithaeron, the place for the god's sacred rites, which was resounding with songs and the shrill cries of worshippers. So already, from the description, you realise it's going to be quite frenzied. So Ovid is probably going to reflect that in the language, which is why this passage is by no means easy. But let's get stuck in. Okay, so Monte Ferre medio est, etc. These first two lines are just a description of the scene. So Ferre, meaning almost, so almost in the middle of the mountain. Cingentibus silvis, with woods surrounding Ultima, the edges. Porus ab arboribus, free from trees. Spectabilis undique, visible everywhere. And then you nick your S from that first line to go with campus. So was a plain, was a field. Hic, it tells you in the vocab, means here. Now, here is where stuff gets a little bit weird, because we've got oculis, which agrees with profani, so we've got these unholy eyes in either the ablative or the dative plural. We've got that man seeing, illum cernentem, and as the descriptions told us, we know that Pentheus has gone up there to spy on women, so presumably that's describing him seeing something. And we've also got what he sees, sacra, sacred rites. And you see prima here, and you think that might agree with sacra, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because then you've got him seeing the first sacred rites with unholy eyes, but then what is videt doing there? So presumably that means we need another nominative from somewhere. And you can see we've got another prima here. So prima seems to be describing something or other, but we've not yet found a nominative. However, on line 5, we find mater. So it's quite sneaky here. You have to consider the fact that without that extra nominative, this doesn't really make sense, so that's why we go find it with mater. Now, if we've got mater vidit, his mother saw, it's probably going to be that prima agrees with her this time. So his mother saw first, or his mother was the first to see illum cernentem. That's why now the accusative here makes sense. Him watching sacra, the sacred rites, with his oculis profanis, with his unholy eyes. And then it continues to describe the actions of his mother. So she first was driven, est concita, was driven in a mad rush in sarno cursu. And in fact, we don't need to say she, we can say his mother again if you prefer. So the mother was driven, his mother was driven first in a mad rush. And clamavit, she shouted, O Gemini adeste sorores, O twin sisters. Adeste literally, be here, but if she's given an order here, adeste is an imperative. It makes more sense to say, come here. And she continues to speak. Ille aper, that bore, in nostris erat qui maximus agris. Now, maximus, we've here got a nominative superlative, which must be describing this aper, this bore. So that bore who, enormous, you could even just put it in commas as kind of an extra bit of information, who enormous, qui maximus, erat wanders in nostris agris, those two words agree, in our fields. And then you have a gerundive, ille mihi feriendos aper, that bore must be feriendos. Ferio means I strike, I kill, I slay, whichever one of those you prefer, basically. That bore must be struck, mihi, by me. Remember, the agent, when you have a gerundive, is in the dative case rather than the ablative. Okay, and then she stops speaking. And then you've got some nominatives here. Omnis, turba, forens. So raging, the whole crowd, ruit, rushed, in unum, into one. Remember, in unum's quite often used in descriptions of battle to mean against one person, towards one person. So the whole crowd raging, rushed towards one man. We know Pentheus here is a man, and obviously the unum's masculine anyway. Cuncti coiunt, they all came together. Fremitu is your ablative. Fourth declension and wither raw. They followed. We're going to assume it means him. We're not given a noun in the following line, but we're given some accusative adjectives, trepidum and, well, the participle loquentem there. So they followed him, now trembling, now loquentem speaking, minus verba violenta, less violent words. Okay. So a little bit messy in the first few lines, but things start to fall into place. And as long as you grasp onto the idea that you've got the mother, a group of women, and then this masculine man who's been mistaken for a boar, then hopefully the adjectives start to fall into place and you recognise the gender of various things. And it continues on line 10. Saukios wounded, he, however, Dixit said, fair opem. So an imperative here, bring help, and then it tells us at the bottom, mater terra means aunt. So bring help, aunt, and he calls her name autonoi. And then you've got moveant, and that A there tells you that it's a present subjunctive, because otherwise it would just be movent if it was indicative. So this is a yussive subjunctive. Let the umbrae, the shades of acteon, move your minds. And it's a bit sneaky here that Ovid's put acteon in here, but there is a little bit of information at the bottom there. So as it says, acteon is Autonoi's son who had been torn apart by his own hunting dogs. So what Pentheus is trying to say here, like, remember what happened to Actaeon, consider the fact that I might not be actually a boar, I might be a man that you're about to tear apart. So yeah, let the shades, even let the ghost of Actaeon move your minds. And then we continue with the second half, so illa quis Actaeon nescit. Literally, she who did not know Actaeon, but presumably she's going to remember her own son. So she did not remember, it's probably going to be better here because she's in this kind of crazed Bacchic state. So she who did not remember Actaeon, dextranque precantis abstulit. So we've got precantis as a genitive here, and dextram as your accusative. So she snatched away the right hand of him as he prayed, or of him praying. Oh, sorry. Computer's loving me today. So inu, you're told that this is an adjective, inoos, meaning of I know, and the O there is ablative because it agrees with raptu. So inu raptu is the snatch of I know, or the seizing of I know. So we've already been told what happened to his right hand, so then we are told the other altera was stolen, was torn off, lacerata est, by Ino's seizing. Non habet infelix, the unfortunate man did not have, and then your accusative is over here. This is a relative clause, but the noun that the relative quae is referring to has been put inside the relative clause, which we have seen before. It's not unheard of. So the unfortunate man did not have arms which he might tend at, which he might stretch out matri to his mother. But, said, ostendens, showing his vulnera trunca, his wounds mutilated by dereptis membris, by his limbs torn off. Ait ad spice mater, he said, look, mother. Now, in the next section, lots of words going on, lots of jumbled up stuff. Agave is definitely our nominative here, and we've been given our verb ululavich, so shrieked. Agave shrieked. And then we've got digitis agreeing with cruentis. We've got complexa, which describes the nominative agave. And we've got two neuters here, avulsum, caput. They agree with each other. But we're left with visis. And yes, it looks like it could agree with digitis cruentis, but those words describe her bloody hands, which are holding this caput, this head, which has been torn off. So it's unlikely that visis is going to describe it. So it's more likely to be just an ablative absolute, just with the participle. So at the things having been seen, agave shrieked. So in nicer English, Agave shrieked at these sights, and avulsum caput, having torn off his head, complexa, she grasped it, and having grasped it, digitis cruentis, in her bloody hands, clamat, she shouted. Io, we're just told to translate as Io. It's just a kind of call to her fellow Bacchic ladies. So she shouted, Io, comrades, hoc opus, this task, this act is our victory, Victoria Nostra. And then there's this sort of weird, again, another natural image from Ovid, and it goes on for 3 lines. So, non citius, not more quickly. And then you've got frondes, which we're told means leaves, and you've got something about autumn and cold. And on the next line, clinging to a tree, and there's winds involved. So hopefully you get some sense that what's happening here is Ovid saying that the leaves falling from trees does not happen more quickly than Pentheus having his limbs ripped off. So lines 19 to 20, therefore, if you start with the nominative, you've got on line 19, on line 20, which is ventus. So the wind, and then your verb rapit, snatch or seize. So the wind does not seize, and then your accusatives are on line 19, frondes tactas, the leaves touched by the frigore autumni, by the frost of the genitive autumn. So the wind does not seize, the leaves touched by the frost, the cold of autumn. Iamque male herentes alta abore, now hardly clinging in the high tree. Citius, more quickly. And then you've got your quam on line 21, than. Okay, so that whole thing again, just to check. The wind does not snatch the leaves touched by the frost of autumn, now hardly clinging in the high tree, more quickly than membra direpta sunt viri, than the limbs of, we can put in a that here because we know it's referring to Pentheus, so then the limbs of that man were snatched by the manibus nefandis, by the sinful hands. Okay.